I'd like to welcome you to hear, I think, a very interesting discussion of the World Energy Outlook by Fatih Birol. Fatih is the chief economist of the International Energy Agency and also chair of the IEA Energy Business Council that connects the energy industry with policymakers. As I said, he's the chief economist, but I think it's important to establish his credentials immediately, that he has a bachelor's degree in power engineering from Istanbul, so he's an MIT kind of economist, and he did that before going on to Vienna, where he got his advanced degrees in energy economics. I think being in Vienna, he then, perhaps liking the pastry, I'm not sure, stayed for a while at OPEC. And I find then the transition from OPEC in 1995 to IEA to have a certain irony, since the IEA was established in 1974 in response to the 1973 oil embargo. So Fatih, I think, has seen much of the energy world. He is also, I'm sure many of you have read, and maybe here because of reading a rather provocative recent piece of work that suggested that the United States would be, in fact, the world's leading oil producer, and I am assuming Fatih will touch upon that in his World Energy Outlook. Not surprising from what I've said already, Forbes magazine has labeled him one of the most influential people in the global energy discussion, and then there are major awards from a long list of countries that I will not bother to go through. It's kind of like the EU plus Turkey, the United States, Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I will say something, I mean, more from the kind of the peer award world, that he's a winner of the International Association of Energy Economics Award for outstanding contributions to the field. So the World Energy Outlook, copy of which is here, a nice $200 volume from the IEA. This is really, I would say, the signature publication of the IEA, major global resource, and one of the prime responsibilities for Fatih to produce. We are also going to have the unusual event here today in which we are welcoming anyone in the audience to explain the possibly apocryphal story of why Fatih has these colors on the World Energy Outlook. And when we come to the beginning of the questions and answers, we'll see if anyone can properly explain these colors. And if you do, and you get the book if you do. With that, Fatih, please.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, Ernie, for first of all inviting me here. The first thank you. And today, starting I think around 9 o'clock, I was educated by Ernie and his colleagues at MIT, and it was very, very helpful for me. Thank you very much for that as well. Another thank you is we work with the MIT Energy Initiative. In fact, working is a bit exaggeration, but we benefit from your work a lot and learn from your studies. And also, we recently stole one of your staff members, Greg Frost. I don't know if Greg is here. Your communication officer is now with us, with the IEA. Everything Ernie said about me, I don't want to comment on it, but there is one thing that I have to correct. This is $200, but we have a discount for the universities. So if you want to, it can be about $20 cheaper for you if you want to buy that. So, I'm trying to make it a good price. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Now, what we just published the Outlook 2 weeks ago, and we got a lot of press attention, and I wanted to share with you some of the findings now. The first issue that we brought in our book is we think that the foundations of global energy system are shifting, and shifting rapidly. And there are a few drivers of that shift. The first one is the resurgence of oil and gas production in a few countries. US, Canada, thanks to unconventional energy, but also Iraq, a very important oil country, and a bit different than it is neighbors in terms of the investment framework and how the country is run. In Iraq, any company can go and invest. An international company can go and invest, unlike some of its neighbors. So different character. And we expect Iraq to play a crucial role in the next years to come, which I will come in a minute. Second driver of the change is that we see in many countries, many OECD countries, there is a change how the nuclear power is perceived. Germany, Switzerland, followed by Japan and France, are changing their nuclear policies, cutting down their ambitions, and in some cases, phasing out the nuclear power completely. And this has implications for the global energy system. If nuclear goes down, at least in some countries, something has to come up, additional demand, to compensate that decline. Third, which goes unnoticed because we don't read much in the newspapers, that there is a growing momentum on the energy efficiency side. Only in last year, at least 4 major economies, 4 major countries put together significant legislations in terms of energy efficiency. In the United States, the fuel efficiency, the CAFE standards, but more importantly in China, in the last 5-year plan, 12 5-year plan, there's an important target for efficiency improvement. Third, in Europe, we have an energy efficiency directive now. It's a directive for all the European EU countries. And in Japan, there is also a strong target in terms of electricity savings. So these together, what is happening in the oil and gas production, which I will come in a minute, nuclear power, changing the position, and the efficiency on the demand side gives us a bit different picture than we used to expect in the next years to come. And as such, we think foundations of global energy system are shifting substantially. The second point, when we put the context, is about the oil prices. When we think about or talk about the high oil prices, the first number comes to our mind is the 2008 $147. This is good, but this is not the right way to look at it. The oil prices to have an impact on the economy or the investment decisions, the duration of the prices is very important. And when you look at the year 2012, 1st of January of this year up to today, when you look at the average oil prices, we have the highest oil prices ever in the history. And as such, we believe it's a major challenge for the global economic recovery, especially for certain countries. When we look at the natural gas prices, a completely different picture. Natural gas prices in the world are very different from each other. In Europe, the Europeans pay about 5 times higher than the United States for the natural gas prices. And in Asia, it is up to 8 times higher. This is very impressive when you look at a commodity like gas. But more striking is that only 5 years ago, those 3 prices in 3 different regions were more or less the same. There were $1 or $1.50 difference. And in 5 years of time, which is very, very short period of time, there's a huge change with major consequences. On the unsustainability front, World Energy Outlook deals not only with energy, but the sustainability issue. One of the data that we follow every year is the fossil fuel subsidies. Many governments in emerging countries subsidize the consumption of fossil fuels, oil products, natural gas, electricity produced from fossil fuels, and coal, of course. And last year, 2011, we have seen that about $500 billion, even higher than that, there was fossil fuel subsidies, an increase of 30%. What does this mean? This means the following. You know that in Europe, or I guess in the United States and some states in the United States and in other countries, we have a carbon price in order to make a reduction in the carbon use, fossil fuel use, in order to save or reduce CO2 emissions. In Europe today, it is almost $5 or even less than that, but we want to see it higher. And while these ambitions, these efforts continue to put a price on carbon to make the people not to use fossil fuels worldwide to address the climate change, this $500 billion means there is an incentive of $110 per ton of CO2 for carbon. So it means you give an encouragement to use carbon at the level of $110 per ton of CO2, which is, of course, a major problem. And for me, these fossil fuel subsidies are the public enemy number one for the fight against climate change. Last year, again, we recorded a substantial rise in the CO2 emissions, a full 1 gigaton, a historical high, about half of it coming from China, half from the rest of the world. At the same time, renewable energies are getting more and more under pressure. We have seen 10 years in a row increase each year in the global renewable energy investments. But for the first time in 2012, we expect a decline in the global renewable energy investments, which is very important for climate change and other issues. Third, an issue which is not very much discussed in the energy circles, but since almost 10 years, each year we look at it in the World Energy Outlook, namely energy and the poor. Today, 1.3 billion people, about 20% of global population, has no electricity, has no access to electricity. Mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And if there are no major changes, policy changes worldwide, despite the economic growth in those regions and the rest of the world, in 2035, there will be still 1 billion people who will have no access to electricity, which we think it is another sign of an unsustainable energy system. And finally, this year, for the first time, we worked on an issue, energy and water. Of course, once again, following the footsteps of MIT. What we have found out is the following. Today, about 15% of global energy use is because of energy generation, production of energy. It is cooling for the power plants, biofuels production, shale gas, and other fossil fuel purposes. And our numbers show that very soon, if not already, in several countries, availability of water will be a critical factor in defining the economic viability of many projects. And as such, it will be something that we need to pay attention to. When we look at the future, we see a major shift in the role of different countries. the share of the OECD countries, so-called the rich world, namely US, Canada, plus all European countries, Japan, Australia, Korea, and New Zealand, their share, mid-70s, were about 2/3 of the global energy use. They were dominating the game. But very soon, we see that that share is set to decline to only 1/3 of the global energy use. The growth is coming from China, India, and Middle East. And what does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? This means that the decision which will be made in Beijing or New Delhi for their own domestic energy markets will not only affect them, but the rest of the world through different trade and technology linkages. And also, looking at this picture, it is not an exaggeration to say that the center of gravity of the global energy system is shifting to east slowly but surely. Ernie mentioned the United States. Yes, we made a special emphasis on what is going on in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere. In US, domestic oil production, US oil production, was declining many, many years, the conventional production. But as a result of the new technologies, fracking namely, we see that the unconventional oil, shale oil, will bring the total US oil production up. And as a result, we think that around 2017, 5 years from now, United States will be the largest oil producer of the world, overtaking Saudi Arabia. But of course, Saudi Arabia remains still the largest oil exporter of the world. So producer is something, exporter is something else. But US will be the top producer. In terms of natural gas, the same story. The conventional gas production was declining many, many years, and we see that as a result of development on the shale gas production, we expect United States will be the largest, clearly the largest gas producer of the world, with significant difference to Russia around 2015. So within 10 years of time, US will be the largest oil producer and largest natural gas producer of the world, overtaking Saudi Arabia and Russia, respectively. Now, this has, of course, many implications, this development, several implications. One of them is the role of Middle East and US. Until recently, United States was importing a significant chunk of its oil from Middle East. But very soon, we will see that the US imports from Middle East will go down almost to zero. So US may not need to import any oil from Middle East sometime soon. At the same time, Middle East, the countries in Middle East, until recently, they were exporting about half of their oil to West, half of it to Asia. And as a result of these developments, almost 90% of the Middle East oil will go to Asia, to China and India. And there will be a new trade axis built and growing every single day between Gulf and Beijing and New Delhi. And of course, this trade axis will have many implications on different fronts. Iraq is a very crucial country in the oil markets, and you will hear about Iraq in the next years more and more when it comes to the oil production. Every year in the outlook, we focus on a country in depth, and this year we have chosen Iraq, working with the Iraqi government, with the industry. And what we have found out is that Iraqi oil production, which is about 3 million barrels per day today, will be doubling very soon, around 2020, and increasing afterwards. And this will make Iraq a major player in the international oil markets. In other words, every second barrel of oil which will come to the markets in the next 20 years will come from Iraq, the other one from other countries. Highlighting the importance of Iraq, a country with huge resources and very cheap to produce. To produce 1 barrel of oil in Iraq is about 10 times cheaper than producing in Russia, for example, to give you an example. About, again, 8 times cheaper than producing in Brazil and other countries. And where will the Iraqi oil go? It will go basically to Asia, and the main destination will be China. 2 million barrels per day of Iraqi oil will go to China, and vice versa. When I mentioned the production growth in Iraq, 30% of that growth will come from the oil fields in Iraq, which are either directly or indirectly run by Chinese companies. So there will be two ways of a trade linkage there, which I call B2B, Baghdad to Beijing trade link, and this will be a very important trade link in the next years to come. Now, natural gas, another subject that the MIT Energy Initiative work since several years, so did we. And what we see is that what is happening in the natural gas markets in US, Canada, and Australia is affecting everybody. You may think that it is only affecting the United States, but if you think so, you are wrong. It is affecting everybody, even if you do not produce 1 BCM of natural gas through different linkages. And from this, there are losers and there are winners, and there are countries which are in between. Winners are obvious: US, Canada, Australia, where you can produce unconventional gas. Losers are mainly current traditional gas exporters, because the current trade flows will increase substantially in the next years to come as a result of new producers coming in the picture. And the traditional gas exporters, what they thought a few years ago they would export, will need to discount their export numbers, because many of their potential clients at that time, such as the United States, they are producing their own natural gas. And on top of that, some of them are exporting that gas and will export that gas. This is the one reason why they are losing. And the second one is that many importers, gas importers in the world now, are sitting on the table and negotiating the price of natural gas in a much stronger way with the traditional gas exporters, because there are other producers where they can get also natural gas. United States, and this is mainly happening in Europe, this negotiation between Europe and Russia, by the way, and United States gave a gift to Europeans to negotiate with the traditional gas exporters. This gift may be a deliberate gift or not, but at the end of the day, this is a major gift given by United States and Canada to Europeans and other countries when they negotiate with the traditional gas exporters, making their hands stronger on the table in terms of price negotiations. So these changes in the oil gas efficiency front makes a major change in the geopolitical picture and the picture of energy security. Many countries in the world today puts the energy security top of their agenda. And energy security has many, many ways of defining, but one very practical way of looking at it is how much oil and gas you import for your own use. The higher it is, those imports in your use, the more risky it is for your energy security, simply put. For example, China is one of the countries which takes the energy security issue very seriously. And today, China imports about 15% of it is natural gas, and about half of it is oil. And this is a major concern for China. I am sure many of you followed it. 2 weeks ago, there was a Chinese Communist Party conference, and energy security was one of the top issues discussed. But the same for Europe, India, and other countries. And we think they are right to be worried, especially when we look at the future, because all of them will import more oil and more natural gas. China, India, Europe, not Japan, because Japan is already 100%. It cannot go beyond that. Japan is already at that corner. But there is one country which shows a completely different picture, which is the United States. In the United States, we see that US will be around 2020 a natural gas exporter, so no need for imports anymore. And oil imports will go to a minimum. This is definitely a major shift in the US energy picture, and this may well have implications beyond energy. When our report came out, many newspapers talk about our finding of United States making giant steps for self-sufficiency. But most of them made a mistake. They thought this self-sufficiency is only as a result of increasing oil production. This is right, but this is only one part of the story. The other part of the story of needing less oil to import is also as a result of the recently introduced CAFE standards for fuel efficiency. Because as a result of the new fuel efficiency standards, United States domestic oil consumption will be lower in the future. So higher domestic production, lower domestic oil consumption means you need less oil to import. There are two legs of this success story. Technological improvement, and you produce more oil, and also as a result of the first Obama administration policies, you have seen fuel efficiency standards in the United States, I should say as a European, finally introduced, and as a result of that, you will see more efficient cars, therefore less oil consumed. Therefore, this achievement, this picture on the oil is not only as a result of what happened and what is happening in North Dakota, but also what happened or what will happen in Detroit as a result of joint efforts. Now, electricity generation is a very important part of the energy picture. And when we look at the countries a bit in Japan, we see nuclear is losing a market share, natural gas and renewables are growing. In Europe, again, gas and renewables, mainly as a result of government subsidies, growing. And in the United States, again, natural gas and renewables, assuming that the renewable subsidies are continuing. We see a penetration of that. India, a very important country in terms of energy, among other things. Looking at these numbers, if there was no China, India would be the China, because it is very big, the numbers. And India is becoming, around 2020, the largest coal importer of the world. And this is a huge thing, especially for the Asian markets and for the coal markets. But even this growth, where would it bring to India? In our outlook, there are thousands of numbers. And if you ask me what is the most interesting number for you, I can give you one number, which is definitely nothing to do with oil or anything. It is the following, and it is more than, in fact, energy. It is a bit on the economic history. Namely, you all know, or most of you know, I am sure, that the electricity consumption per capita is an indicator of the level of economy, level of civilization, and other things, where you come in terms of the economic welfare. Our numbers show, ladies and gentlemen, that despite this growth, huge growth in India, electricity consumption in India in the year 2035, 20 years from now, 2035, will be equal to the electricity consumption in the United States in the year 1947. So there will be still a 100 years of a difference between rich and poor in the world, which I think gives us a perspective how to assess certain global issues from economy to climate change discussions. And of course, we have China. Thanks God we have China, because we have big numbers. So China is dominating the game. Just to put in a context, China electricity capacity will grow, the increase in the next 20 years will be equal to the one United States plus one Japan. So China will add to its capacity a current US capacity of today and the current capacity of Japan of today. So two countries together is only an addition to the Chinese capacity. And this will have huge implications. Leaving aside the implications for Chinese, let's think about ourselves, the people who live outside of China. It will affect all of us. For example, you all deal with different technologies here. If China chooses one technology, let's say X to be unbiased, technology X, which is very costly currently. But if China goes for that technology, as a result of the sheer size of the additions, and as a result of learning by doing curves, this technology may well be a cost-effective technology in a decade or so. Or if China goes for coal, pushes coal, this will have implications for the entire coal markets. Let me give you one example. Beginning of this year, Chinese premier was in a meeting in Abu Dhabi when I talk about the impact of China. And it is very rare that he came in front of the energy people and he gave a speech about the recent achievements of China, which was an excellent and very impressive speech. And when you see what China did, the numbers were very, very impressive. And one of the things he mentioned in the context of environment and safety, he said, we closed down last 2 years about 100 inefficient and small, very small coal mines in order to bring safety to our coal miners, because they were very primitive coal mines and very inefficient and unsafe coal mines. This is, of course, very legitimate and very good decision of the Chinese government. No problem, and this is taken to save the lives of the Chinese miners. Very well welcome. However, let's go one step further. As a result of this even very small coal mines closures, China had to import less than 3% of it is coal. Less than 3%. It's so small for China that perhaps even Chinese statisticians didn't even notice it. Very small for China. But it was so big for the world that the coal prices jumped from $90 to $120 worldwide. And the point of departure is a completely different story. It is to save the lives of the coal miners in China, which is very legitimate and very good step. And of course, this is a very good policy move. But the implications are huge, given the sheer size of the country. So this is what I'm saying. We have to keep a very good eye on what is happening in China to understand what could happen at home for us, for the other energy markets. Now, one of the major drivers of the renewable growth is the subsidies. Today, worldwide, there are $88 billion subsidies worldwide, and in the next 20 years, those subsidies, to realize these green bars, and the renewables bars, to realize them, they will come close to 4.8 trillion. But the interesting thing is, a big portion of that subsidies are already committed and locked in. And UNITA also has, again, a significant chunk needed to reach the 2020 targets, which is set in many countries in the world. And then you have the subsidies for biofuels. But I can tell you that in many countries in the world, especially in Europe, as a result of the financial difficulties we have, governments are reducing renewable subsidies, which could have substantial effect for the renewable industry for the next years to come. Now, let me finish the first part of my presentation, namely the implications of the changing global energy system. Just giving you one single number. There is one issue, one implication, which is on the geopolitical implications of the changing global energy system, which I will not talk about it today. But there is other implication, which is on the different economic positioning of different countries. Now, when we look at the electricity prices worldwide, we see a significant difference between major powers in the world. I mentioned the difference in natural gas prices, but on top of that, when you look at the electricity prices, for example, European electricity prices are about 50% higher than the United States and 3 times higher than China. And this has major implications for the European economy, manufacturers, especially heavy industry, first of all. Why we have high prices in electricity prices in Europe? First of all, a major input for electricity generation, natural gas, is more expensive. Second, in Europe, we are cutting down the share of nuclear power, running nuclear power, which was generating electricity lower prices. Third, we have substantial amount of renewable subsidies. And fourth, we have a carbon price in Europe. So as a result of that, many European industries are pushing the governments to change their policies in order not to be in a difficult position vis-à-vis their rivals. But the picture is clear. In next years to come, Europe and Japan will be disadvantaged in terms of their competitiveness vis-à-vis Chinese and US manufacturers. Europeans will pay much more money for energy, and this will have implications for their purchasing power, which I think is bad news for Europeans. Now, let me come to the last and the second part of my presentation. In the World Energy Outlook, every year, we focus on a fuel. Last year, we worked on coal, the year before renewables, the year before natural gas, and so on. And this year, as a fuel, we have chosen energy efficiency. We looked at every country in the world, and sector by sector, to understand how much potential is there to use energy more efficiently and in an economic manner. What is the economic viable potential in the world? I mentioned to you in the beginning that in the US we have now the CAFE standards, in China intensity targets, Japan and Europe. Even if those policies are implemented in a perfect manner, in 20 years of time, we would be still using only 1/3 of the economically viable efficiency potential, which is definitely a big waste. And for me, I follow as Ernie mentioned, the energy policy of governments for some time. For me, this picture is an epic failure of the international energy policy making. I was telling the colleagues a few hours ago, last week I was in a meeting, in a discussion with a CEO of a major, an international oil company. And when I showed him this picture and the audience, I said, what would you do if you had an oil field which is making very handsome revenues for your company, producing a lot of money for you, cash for you, and after your people use 1/3 of the reserves of that field and close it down, even though it was making a lot of money for you, what would you do? And 2/3 will be under the ground. And he said, I would fire the reservoir engineer. And when I look at this picture, I don't know whom should we fire. But we have to fire somebody, or we have to get a lesson from that. 2/3 of the economically viable potential is not used worldwide. And we are losing money. The only good news in this picture, I could say, is that when you look at different sectors worldwide, you see that the industry sector makes the most out of its potential. Why it is a good news? Because, with all respect to the industry colleagues, the companies, especially the companies who are contributing to the MIT Energy Initiative, with respect to them, I would say that the industry has one single objective: to make money. There are other objectives, but the main objective is to make money. If industry makes the most of the effort, it means there is a business case here. There is money here. Gives us a hope. And today, many countries are now pushing the energy efficiency button, which is definitely good news. So we thought, how can the energy efficiency, if and how can it change the energy picture, global energy picture? So what we have done is that this is our central case, what I told you up to now, and we said, what happens if the governments would push the policy measures which would make economic sense, only economic sense? And we build a scenario which we called, on the basis of that, an efficient world scenario. What does economic sense mean? Economic sense means the following. You go and you want to buy a car. There are two cars that are exactly the same qualifications, same color, same comfort, and everything is the same. But one of the cars is $200 more expensive than the other one, but more efficient. But everything is the same. So normally, you go and buy the car which is cheaper. Now, we took into consideration all the choices that the consumers go and make a bit more expensive choices, but this difference, $200 or whatever it is, will be paid back in maximum 5 years of time. Payback period of 5 years. So which makes perfect economic sense. So if they are done, then the global energy demand growth will be much slower, with the same comfort, with the same lifestyle, and we would save worldwide a lot of coal, a lot of natural gas, a lot of oil, and everything. This is exactly the same lifestyle, same comfort, but making the wise choices. Therefore, energy efficiency is very good, we believe, for energy saving, energy security. The second thing is, these choices worldwide are helping the governments or the countries' economies. We found out that the economic growth in many countries can get a boost through different channels, ranging from lower energy bills to give a push to employment in many cases. And it also helps the consumers to reduce their energy expenditures for electricity, for gasoline, and for others. And the third benefit of the energy efficiency, the first one was energy security, using less energy. The second is the good for the economy. And the third one is on the climate change front. In the World Energy Outlook, every year, we look at the climate change carefully because energy is a main responsible sector for the greenhouse gas emissions. And when you look at our numbers, you will see that we are, looking at the energy sector, perfectly on track for a temperature increase in the next decades up to 6 degrees Celsius. Every year we put a check on that. And there are many colleagues here who know much better than me, this would have devastating implications for our planet. But world leaders, thanks God we have them, they agreed to limit the temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius. What does 2 degrees Celsius mean? It means to have a lifestyle which is more or less similar to the one we have today. And even this, according to scientists, is not taken for granted that it will be exactly the same like today. But let's assume that 2 degrees is our target. So what we have done, we wanted to know where we are today in terms of the time we have left, room of maneuver to be in line with the 2 degrees trajectory. Because when you look at the appetite to find a solution to climate change, to be frank with you, it is not at its maximum, it is sliding down in the agenda. Today, world leaders are discussing, or supposed to discuss in Doha, about the future of climate policy, and you barely read anything in the newspapers about this. So therefore, it is important to find out, we thought, where are we now and how much room we have, still any chance to be in line with the 2 degrees trajectory. So we made the following exercise. We said, let's assume in the next 25 years, we do not build worldwide, we do not build any new power plant, 25 years. No new cars come in the street. No new factories, plants are built. Only from the existing power plants, cars, factories, how much emissions will come from the existing infrastructure, and how does it compare with the budget given us to stay under the 2 degrees? How much chances we have? And of course, we all know that it is nonsense that there will be no new power plants built. Every day we are building new power plants, cars coming, and so on. So what we have found out is the following. Only from the existing infrastructure, existing power plants, cars, industry, the emissions coming from this structure eat up already 80% of the emissions allowed us to stay under the 2 degrees trajectory. And it is, of course, every day we are building power plants, and every day we are building a new power plant. This 80% is going 81, 82, whatever it is. Every day it is growing. And the room of maneuver we have is very, very little. And what we have found out is that if there is no major change in the energy investment trends, in the energy policies, this room of maneuver, which is getting smaller and smaller every day, will be closed, completely closed as of year 2017, and we are locking in the energy infrastructure to be in line with a 2 degrees trajectory. And to see a major shift to change the trends, there need to be certain moves worldwide. International legally binding agreement for which I don't see major chances, at least for the time being. Or a carbon price in key countries, key emitting countries. I don't know, you know better than me, most of you, if there are chances or not in that respect. So we thought, since it is so, and when we look at the other clean technologies or zero emission technologies, the situation, renewables, I told you, this is not in a best shape. Nuclear power, a very important technology, but it is sliding down. Carbon capture and storage, a most crucial technology to address the climate change and reducing the CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. Appetite for CCS is also declining. So what can we do? We said, what about if the countries push the button for energy efficiency? Not for the climate reasons, but for the cost reasons. Cost for the macroeconomy, cost for the consumers. What happens to that? Our efficient world scenario, which was good for energy security, which was good for the economy. If those policies are pushed, which would make economic sense, full economic sense, the door to 2 degrees can be still closed 5 additional years. And these 5 years, so buying 5 years, may be extremely precious. Why? Because in that 5 years of time, we may well see a change in how the key countries look at the climate change and the necessity to have an international legally binding agreement. Or some technologies which are not mature enough today, low carbon technologies, may use that 5 years to be low cost and penetrating markets. So therefore, we think energy efficiency is not only good to address the energy security, as the United States did for the CAFE standards, and other countries are doing, and not only good for the economy, but also good to address the climate change and other environmental problems. So let me finish my presentation, dear colleagues, by trying to putting my thoughts together. Energy decision-making is becoming more and more complex. So many things are involved, and a decision which can be good for energy sector may not be very good for environment or for the economy, and vice versa. A decision which is good for the economy may have very bad implications for environment. So therefore, for the governments, it is very important to have a consistent energy policies, not only looking at the energy sector, but beyond that. I tried to highlight to you that there is a major shift on the production and the use of energy globally when you look at different countries and their roles. And as I tried to show you, this will change the relative position of countries in terms of their economic power vis-a-vis each other, but also it will have implications for the geopolitical balances, as energy is crucial for the geopolitical positioning of many countries, if not all. Iraq, we believe, will play a crucial role in the next years to come as a major oil producer in the Gulf region. And climate change, once again, sliding down in the agenda. And the problem is, the later we fix the problem, climate change problem, the more costly it will be. The more costly it will be, the more difficult it will be to have an agreement. The more difficult it will be to have an agreement, it will take more time and more costly it will be, and it continues. So therefore, the cost of inaction is very high. And we believe that the benefits that I highlighted to you on the energy efficiency front, good news for energy security, good news for economy, and also helping to address the climate change problem is very important. And our suggestion to many countries is to push the energy efficiency button. I'm very happy to see that in the MIT, our colleagues are taking this issue very seriously in the energy initiative context and making major steps in that direction. So let me finish my words by saying that I started to talk with you today a prediction we made in the World Energy Outlook a few years ago about the unconventional energy revolution for oil and gas, which is happening now, which is good news for many. And now I would like to finish by saying another unconventional energy revolution, which is my hope, not the prediction, hope, and I would like to see this unconventional energy revolution this time on energy efficiency. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fatih. We do have time for only a very few questions, and also, of course, if anybody has the magic answer to the colors of the World Energy Outlook, you should offer it. Please use the microphones if you could, please. Let's start here and then go there.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. So I would like to go back again to the oil. So your presentation is a snapshot of the current situation. I mean, there could be a chance where tomorrow we discover an oil well in China and could reduce the import going forward. And second question, again, regarding the trade between the US and Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, it's not Saudi Arabia oil is going to be always cheaper than the production in the US. I mean, US can say to Saudi Arabia, I don't need you, but it's only for a short period of time. On the long term, still I need Saudi Arabia because their production is cheaper and maybe their reserve capacity is bigger than the US. Thank you.
Go one by one? Okay. Of course, there could be many discoveries in different countries. This is the current situation. But to be honest with you, currently how much oil resources are there are more or less known. But if there are surprises, it can change this game, and even technology can change this picture. Definitely so. But what is happening in the United States, according to our calculations, we will see a growth of both natural gas and the oil production if the prices are attractive enough. Oil prices about $80 and the natural gas prices about $5, $6 will give a major boost to U.S. Production growth. Saudi Arabia and U.S., I think U.S. and Saudi Arabia have an excellent relationship in terms of energy trade, and I expect this to continue. And if U.S. wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, of course it will do so. But what we are saying is that when we look at the demand, production, and the import needs, there will not be a need to buy oil from other countries. But if the economics determine to buy oil from other countries, they may well do so. But according to our calculations, at the price level, about $75, $80, this economics would mean that the U.S. will produce its own oil in this country.
I want to remind Fatih that he has an airplane to catch.
Yes.
So we're going to ask for short questions and short responses, please.
Are the colors to match the MIT Energy Initiative banner? That's my first, but that's not my question. Okay, so do you truly think we can mitigate climate change without nuclear long term, so past 2035? And is the IEA aware of or promoting the reactor concepts that are low pressure, molten salt, thorium?
Your first answer was wrong. So it is not MIT Energy Initiative. I wish it was, but it is not. It is something even much more deep in my heart rather than the MIT. So this is
shocked.
Exactly. Now, let me tell you, we think in the absence of nuclear power, it is almost impossible to address the climate change. Nuclear power is a must. Which technologies up to countries, up to the operators to choose, but nuclear power is a crucial part of addressing CO2 emissions. A short answer.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're going to now go to quick questions, and we're going to accumulate them for a collective response.
I have a question about Iran. It was not something that you did not address in the presentation. I'd be interested in hearing the impacts of the sanctions so far and how you model that going forward.
Okay, quickly here.
Are the colors from the Iraqi flag, which is highlighted on the front?
Okay, we have a guest
and
there.
then the
we'll
question,
come back.
I have a question. The question is, you mentioned 18 trillion in economic increases due to the energy efficiency measures pursued. Do you feed that back into energy demand forecasts to rebound energy consumption?
Okay.
Could you say more? Could you say more about Iraq?
More about Iraq.
Okay.
Red for global warming and yellow for renewables.
Okay.
And
it is not that intellectual, by the way. It is less modest.
2 weeks ago, Karl-Heinrich Svanberg, the CEO of BP, was at Harvard, and I asked him about no more than 1/3 of proven reserves of fossil fuels can be consumed prior to 2050. He didn't answer that question. I'm wondering, what's the kind of response that you're getting from people about that issue of stranded costs?
Okay, we have only 2 more questions. That's it. One here and there.
You kind of stole what I was going to say, because I was going crispy planet, catastrophic climate change, starting March.
Okay. Last question.
You left out totally the prospect of fusion, which will concern the climate change very heavily. I'm sure you've considered it, but you left it out totally in your presentation.
Just that. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, the easy ones. The colors have nothing to do with climate change or the Iraqi flag. It is much less intellectual, a bit more on the, I should say, emotional side. But I'm sure Ernie will say what it is. And the book goes to whom? I don't know. The book goes to Ernie, I think. So
absolutely.
Nobody knew about that. So the first about Iran, we think as a result of the sanctions set by the international community, Iranian oil production will decline in the next years to come because of the lack of money for investments. So this is the issue. But Iran has huge oil and gas resources. When the problems with the international community is solved, when the money comes in, I believe Iran will be still a great player for oil and gas markets in the world. The second question, more about Iraq. I think I can say a lot about Iraq to you. We don't have much time, but the most important thing is Iraq resources are huge, and it will be even bigger because in Iraq we have not seen many years an exploration activity. You find something if you look for. In Iraq, it was not looked for many years, and numbers will go, and the production is very cheap. There are some political challenges in the country. When those challenges are solved, Iraq will be a major player. In terms of fusion, it is a very promising technology, but I do not think that it will change the game in the next 20 years, looking at the level of the maturity and the challenges in front of that. There was one more question. Exactly. Rebound effect, yes, we have taken into account, and what we have found out is that there is in the order of 10% rebound effect, but this 10% rebound effect can be minimized, if not nullified, with the right government policies, especially on the pricing front. So these are some answers I want to give to you. If you have any questions, please anytime send us an email. We will be very happy to come back to you with the answers and anything. Shall I give the answer of the question about the colors?
I'll give it.
You give it, okay. Which one?
Forgot the name.
Okay, that's right. So
That's the winner of the book.
Yes.
And furthermore, it was a good luck charm. They beat Manchester United, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, he knows that. Okay, bravo. So very good.
Thank you, Fatih.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.